Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a play. The Washington Commanders have finally reached their Week 12 bye, a moment that might seem like a break on paper but in reality is anything but. After a frustrating 3-8 start to the season, the team isn't using this week to rest on laurels. Rather, they are diving into one of the most pivotal decisions of the year. The status of quarterback Jaden Daniels, who has been sidelined with a dislocated elbow since early November, is under reevaluation during this bye week, and the entire trajectory of the remainder of the season hinges on this assessment. Head coach Quinn has been clear about the process, promising fans an update on Daniels' health once the team reconvenes. But the bigger question remains far more complex than a simple yes or no. The Commanders have to weigh not only his readiness, but also the value of his presence in games that, realistically, may have no bearing on postseason aspiration, according to insiders Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano from ESPN. The debate in Washington is intense, and one single factor could ultimately dictate the outcome: time. Graziano notes that the plan in Washington is still that Daniels will return to the starting lineup once doctors clear him from his elbow injury, which, at face value, signals a team leaning toward immediate reintegration. However, Fowler paints a slightly more cautious picture, explaining that while Daniels could return as early as 3 weeks post-injury, the team has mentally prepared for a longer absence, potentially 5 to 6 weeks. This discrepancy doesn't indicate disagreement so much as it highlights the uncertainty of the situation. In other words, the Commanders' decision isn't just about Daniels' willingness to play or his individual talent. It's about whether enough time exists in this season to make his return meaningful and safe. Given the context of multiple injuries and a struggling roster around him, the timeline itself is a double-edged sword. If Daniels' recovery stretches toward the longer end, a 6-week absence would see him back only in Week 16 against the Philadelphia Eagles, leaving him to play in just the final 3 games. The question then becomes whether those 3 appearances would justify rushing him back onto the field. The Commanders' passing game has been in flux all season, plagued by injuries and the absence of reliable weapons. Terry McLaurin's availability remains uncertain, and the team's roster turnover has already disrupted chemistry, making it difficult to imagine Daniels stepping into an offense where he can both shine and rebuild his rhythm. It's not just about health, it's about whether the team can create an environment where he can play effectively without jeopardizing his long-term development or risking further injury. The strategic dilemma grows even sharper when considering the psychological and physical toll on Daniels. Returning to play hero ball in a floundering offense where targets are inconsistent and protection might be subpar could exacerbate the risk of further setbacks. The Commanders have already seen him face 3 separate injuries this season, and the management of those injuries must balance competitive desire with prudence. Insiders suggest that the team is not ruling out shutting Daniels down entirely if it seems that rushing him back would do more harm than good. While fans and analysts alike crave the excitement of seeing a star quarterback return, the harsh reality is that the benefits of his presence might not outweigh the potential cost, especially in a season where the postseason is out of reach. Beyond the physical considerations, there's the broader impact on team dynamics and future planning. Daniels' return timing could influence coaching decisions, roster evaluations, and even the Commanders' approach to developing younger talent. If he comes back for just a handful of games, the coaching staff must decide how to integrate him without disrupting the progress or exposing weaknesses of players who have been filling in. Additionally, the optics of playing Daniels in a largely inconsequential stretch of games could affect his long-term perception and contract negotiations, as performance in a limited window may not accurately reflect his capabilities or value to the franchise. This underscores why time is the pivotal factor. It's not just a question of healing, but of whether the remaining calendar allows for meaningful contribution. In practical terms, the Commanders' approach will likely hinge on careful medical assessments, combined with internal discussions about risk management. Dan Quinn has emphasized that updates will come after the bye week, signaling that the team is taking a measured approach rather than making a snap decision. The challenge lies in interpreting medical clearance in the context of the season's reality. Daniels might be physically capable of playing, but readiness encompasses more than just healing bones and ligaments. It's about timing, team preparedness, and the likelihood of him being able to operate at a high level without further setbacks. For a team struggling to find offensive rhythm, the calculus is as much about context as it is about health. The broader narrative around Daniels' return also reflects the precarious state of the Commanders' season, with a 3-8 record. The team is facing a crossroads where short-term decisions must be evaluated against long-term stability. This isn't merely a question of a single player's availability, it's a microcosm of a franchise attempting to balance competitive integrity with prudent player management. Analysts like Fowler and Graziano highlight that while there is potential for Daniels to return, Washington is also bracing for the possibility of his absence extending through the rest of the season. That duality encapsulates the uncertainty surrounding the quarterback position and the fragility of the team's current structure. Ultimately, the decision will likely reflect a combination of medical insight, coaching judgment, and strategic foresight. If Daniels is cleared and the team believes he can contribute meaningfully without risking long-term consequences, a return to the lineup seems probable. Conversely, if the timeline suggests minimal impact for the remainder of the season and a high likelihood of re-injury, the responsible move may be to hold him out, preserving his health for the next campaign. Time, more than any other factor, dictates not only the decision but also the framing of the discussion, underscoring how crucial this bye week is for the Commanders' front office and coaching staff. Fans may be left waiting anxiously, but the reality is that every hour, every assessment, and every medical opinion matters in determining the fate of both Jaden Daniels and the franchise as it navigates the final weeks of an already challenging season. The Commanders are at a juncture where patience may outweigh impatience, and prudence may surpass passion. Jaden Daniels represents not only a potential spark for the remainder of the year, but also a long-term asset whose health must be safeguarded. The convergence of time, medical evaluation, and team needs creates a complex puzzle, with the bye week serving as the critical window to weigh all variables. In the end, the question isn't just whether Daniels will play again this season, but whether the timing aligns to maximize both his performance and the team's future prospects, with each day bringing him closer to potential clearance and each scenario presenting a different set of risks and rewards. Washington's decision will be one that balances hope, reality, and the long-term vision for a quarterback whose career trajectory could hinge on a single, carefully considered choice. The story of Jaden Daniels' return isn't just about a quarterback coming back from injury, it's a reflection of how NFL teams navigate uncertainty, manage talent, and strategize around the relentless pressures of a season that leaves little room for error. Time, as insiders agree, will be the ultimate arbitrator of the decision, dictating not only when Daniels steps onto the field again, but how his presence or absence will shape the Commanders' path forward. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. The air around the Washington Commanders headquarters has been unusually tense lately, and whispers of locker room turmoil are finally starting to surface. According to sources close to the team, the atmosphere during recent practices has been electric, but not in a good way. Dan Quinn, the head coach, who has long been known for his disciplined approach and strategic mind, apparently reached a breaking point during a recent training session, sparking a moment that insiders are calling unprecedented in the franchise's modern history. The specifics are still sketchy, but multiple sources hint at a confrontation that escalated to a point where Quinn, in front of the entire squad, reportedly told one of his players with uncharacteristic intensity, "You're not playing for me anymore now." The exact circumstances leading up to this outburst are being debated by insiders, but the narrative being pieced together is that it wasn't a single isolated incident. Apparently, this player, whose identity remains under wraps, had been on Quinn's radar for weeks due to what the coach perceived as a lack of effort, discipline, or alignment with his vision for the team. Rumors suggest that tensions had been simmering quietly, bubbling under the surface during practices, film reviews, and strategy sessions. Teammates reportedly noticed that Quinn had grown increasingly frustrated, occasionally muttering criticisms in ways that seemed more pointed than usual, hinting that he might be close to losing patience. By all accounts, the scene that unfolded during this infamous practice was intense. Sources claim that the coach, normally measured even in moments of frustration, suddenly snapped after a sequence of plays he found unacceptable. Some teammates describe Quinn pacing aggressively, his voice rising above the usual cacophony of whistles and shouted instructions. before finally directing his ire at this one player. What exactly triggered the final blow isn't entirely clear. Some suggest it was a botched drill, a missed assignment, or perhaps an attitude that crossed an invisible line. Others hint that it was the culmination of repeated behaviors over several weeks. Regardless, the result was a public declaration that this player would no longer have a place in Quinn's plans. The fallout of that moment has reportedly left the locker room in a state of quiet uncertainty. Players who spoke on the condition of anonymity suggest that there is a mix of shock, concern, and, in some corners, apprehension. Quinn has always commanded respect, but seeing a coach break in such a direct, almost emotional manner seems to have shaken the usual order. Rumors have circulated about whether this incident could trigger a chain reaction. Will the player request a trade? Will team management intervene? Is this the beginning of a larger locker room fracture, or merely a lightning bolt that will pass after a period of reflection? Sources close to the franchise hint that discussions behind closed doors are ongoing, with executives weighing both the immediate impact on team morale and the long-term implications for roster decisions. Interestingly, this isn't the first time Dan Quinn has been described as intense or fiery, but insiders suggest that this event may mark a shift in perception. Historically, Quinn has been known for his methodical coaching style, his ability to inspire defensive units, and his emphasis on discipline. Yet, the rumor mill now paints a picture of a coach who may be reaching a threshold of frustration with personnel he feels isn't matching his standards. What adds layers to this story is the notion that this player was not a peripheral figure but someone considered part of the team's core rotation. The notion that a core player could be publicly alienated by a head coach is fueling speculation throughout the NFL circles, as teams and analysts alike wonder how this dynamic will influence the Commanders' season. Locker room cohesion and Quinn's relationship with both players and upper management adding to the intrigue. Fans have been quick to pick up on subtle signals. Some noticed that the player in question seemed subdued during post-practice sessions, while others interpreted social media activity, or a lack thereof, as a sign of tension. Sports commentators, analysts, and bloggers have begun dissecting every interaction between Quinn and his roster, hunting for clues that could corroborate the rumored fallout. The atmosphere around the team is being described as a mix of nervous anticipation and simmering curiosity. The question on everyone's mind: will this be a brief blip, or the start of a more turbulent period for a team that has been striving to establish stability under Quinn's leadership? Sources also suggest that the internal dynamics of the Commanders may be more complex than they appear. Some players are reportedly loyal to Quinn and believe in his methods, willing to endure strict discipline if it leads to success on the field. Others, however, are allegedly growing wary of the intensity and unpredictability of his reactions. This creates an environment where even minor infractions or disagreements can escalate, particularly when the coach's patience is thin. League insiders point out that this type of tension is not unique to the Commanders. Many NFL teams have experienced moments where coaching authority and player autonomy clash, sometimes explosively. But what sets this apart, according to the rumor mill, is the public nature of Quinn's declaration and the fact that it reportedly occurred in front of the team, rather than behind closed doors, a move that is seen as both bold and potentially destabilizing. The timing of the incident has also sparked debate, with the season in full swing, or on the cusp of pivotal matchups depending on which source you trust. Any hint of locker room unrest is magnified. Experts in team dynamics suggest that the effects of this confrontation could ripple through practices, meetings, and even game day strategies. Players may feel pressure to choose sides, to adjust their behavior, or to question their own standing with the coaching staff. Management, meanwhile, faces the difficult task of balancing support for their head coach with the need to maintain a cohesive, motivated team. Rumors indicate that executives are closely monitoring the situation, and while official statements are likely to be measured and professional, insiders expect that internal conversations are anything but calm, as everyone involved weighs the potential consequences of the confrontation. Perhaps most compelling, the story taps into a larger narrative about Dan Quinn's tenure as head coach. He has always been seen as someone who demands high standards, who expects commitment, and who is willing to hold players accountable, sometimes with a strict hand. But what happened during that fateful practice may signal a new level of intensity, a point where professional frustration crossed into personal expression, leaving both player and coach facing a moment of reckoning. NFL circles are buzzing with speculation. Will this mark a turning point in Quinn's leadership style, a test of the players' resilience, or the start of a storyline that will dominate locker room chatter for weeks? If not the rest of the season, for now, the Commanders remain tight-lipped. With no official word on roster moves or disciplinary actions, yet the rumor continues to spread, amplified by those within the team and those who cover the league closely. Fans are left to wonder how this incident will play out on the field, and whether the tension in the locker room will translate into drama during games. One thing is clear, the dynamic between Quinn and his squad has shifted, and everyone from players to executives to fans is waiting to see what comes next. In the world of professional football, moments like this are rarely isolated. They have a way of creating ripples, shaping narratives, and influencing decisions in ways that can resonate far beyond a single practice or confrontation. And in this case, the intensity of Quinn's reaction, paired with the uncertainty surrounding the player's future, has created a story that is only beginning to unfold, leaving the NFL world buzzing with speculation and eager for the next development in what insiders are already calling one of the season's most compelling locker room sagas. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.